Hello there. This is my video essay for art and culture. I've done this intro like 10 times. I don't know what to say. I think I'll figure it out later. I think we should just jump right into it. So, Coca-Cola. It's everywhere. It's in our hands, on our screens, in our culture, and in the occupied West Bank. I'm sure by now we'd all have the same sort of association with Coca-Cola, at least the general public. That is it being just a regular drink, you know? Very yummy, very tasty. But what happens when Coca-Cola does not remain just a soda and instead turns into something more radical and political? Now, I'd like to mention in this essay, because it is my essay, and I get to say whatever I want, I would like to say that every time I've heard Coca-Cola this semester, I've maybe been a little bit cringed out every single time because of this said boycott that is happening, that should be happening. But I also would like to reassure myself in the video that this is for the iconography of Coca-Cola, not necessarily the company of Coca-Cola. So I guess got that out of the way. So I also did want to mention that Coca-Cola inherently has made itself political even from the company's standpoint. I can compare it to the way Starbucks has made itself inherently political even in its attempt for neutrality when they sued their workers' union for standing with Palestine. But in the similar fashion, Coca-Cola has placed its values and money and locations in the places it's wanted to, and I think we should all acknowledge that. I think it's weird to be talking about Coca-Cola as much as we have in this semester without ever mentioning the impact it has had on a specific region, Palestine. I am not afraid to say it. So, without further ado, I will get into my essay, which is going to consist of 4 main artists: Andy Warhol, Gildo Meirelles, Antonio Caro, and Melquiades Herrera. You can see right here. I hope you guys like my setup. So first we're going to start with Andy Warhol, as we can see here. Got 3 of his works here. They're very similar, as you can see, and they're made with printmaking, but a little bit about Andy Warhol in general. He was like a leading figure in the pop art movement, and that emerged around the 1950s and 1960s, and it was kind of like it emerged as a response to consumerism and a lot of consumer culture that was prevalent at the time. Andy Warhol's work was quite primarily focused on like the everyday product kind of thing. So as you can see, the Coca-Cola bottles, but I'm sure most people are pretty familiar with his soup can. So for the specific topic of Coca-Cola, this is the 5 Coke bottles, I think that's what it's called. I think this one was just called Green Coca-Cola Bottles, but I could be mistaken. If I am, then I'll probably put the name on the screen if I can figure out how to do that, because I don't know how to edit anything. But anyways, and the reason why I put all of these up like this, like all 3 of these, is for repetition and the theme of repetition, which will play into all of these and what is kind of being said with these works. I think it can be said that Warhol was pretty fascinated with consumer culture and this mass production, and that's pretty evident in the way he's created these works. The Coca-Cola bottles are all aligned in a very symmetrical and even layout. Because of this repeated imagery and the way that he made his silkscreen print, it was quite mechanical, and it also is reflected in the way that the imagery is shown. Very mechanical, industrial, and advertisement-like, which again is reflective of the consumer culture that he is pretty much, I guess, depicting. And Coca-Cola to him, with his famous quote, is pretty much the perfect example of modern life. So I'm reading the quote by him: "A Coke is a Coke, and no amount of money can get you a better Coke than the one the bum on the corner is drinking." Essentially that it just is a product for the masses, you know? Like, it doesn't matter if you're rich or a celebrity or like a common worker, you would still be getting the same product. And I feel like it can kind of go without saying, but these images look very commercialized, very advertisement-like, which I think also plays into the industrialization and all that. With his quote and stuff, and this artwork, or this series of artworks, it can also kind of question whether he's like celebrating this consumer culture or if it's something he's like revealing about the society. But I think this repetition is something that's really interesting, and that is why I have this image of the Gutenberg press. That's just what reminded me of when I did my research about these Coca-Cola prints. Oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that his method of screen printing was kind of like innovative at the time. I thought that was pretty interesting because it was a long time ago, and I'm in printmaking, self-plug. But the Gutenberg press, I thought, would be something interesting to mention because of this like multiplicity that comes with printmaking, and especially in this format of it looking like repeated and repeated and repeated. A little bit about the Gutenberg press. I don't know if this is like relevant, but I thought it would be fun. But basically made by Johannes Gutenberg, namely in the West, because it's not like, he was not the first to make this type of thing. It was this movable press, which was different for its time, but only namely in the West. But it did mark a beginning of like the printing revolution at the time. And it's like a colossal moment in history because it was like it was a lot of like information and learning was being garnered through this, and it also did create a lot of controversy, which was really interesting to me because, you know, there's some sort of like suppression of information, especially I think in every time period, to be honest, and even right now there's so much that we can see online about places in the world and where we live too, just everywhere, but a lot of it gets suppressed with algorithms and stuff, and it feels kind of like we've never left. Very interesting to me. Yeah, it's the Gutenberg press. Now, moving swiftly along, because we got other places to go, we're going to talk about this work right here, Cildo Mirrorless. Similarly to how Andy Warhol used his works to kind of talk about capitalism, maybe not in a way that's critiquing it or exposing it, I'm not sure, but this one definitely does talk about it in a more critical way. This work was used as a tool of resistance, which is really cool. The artist is a Brazilian conceptual artist, and he namely deals with oppression as well as capitalism and censorship. So, for some context, in 1970, the Brazilian government's like dictatorship was at a peak, and censorship was like very much instated. So it wasn't easy for people to criticize the government openly at all. And Mirrorless wanted to find a way around that, so he took these ready-made Coke bottles and wrote messages on them. For example, here it says "Yankees go home." Hope you guys can see. If not, I'm gonna put it up. We'll see. And what was cool is that he would do this, but he would also then put it back into circulation, and so the messages would get everywhere, you know, and you couldn't stop it. That was what was like beautiful. That was the beauty of it, is that you couldn't stop the message from being spread. I'm not sure if I'll put this in the video, but I saw it somewhere, this post, but I can't find it anywhere. So it was basically about some country, I can't remember where there was a similar issue with censorship, and the way people found a way around that was by power washing messages on pavement. And so it wasn't, you know, you're cleaning the pavement, but you are getting your message across. I thought that was a similar fashion, but I really hope, I'm not sure if it's actually true then, because I can't find the source, but I think it's an interesting point to bring up anyway, just because I love the way that people can really find a way around doing what they want to do if they really want to, you know? If people wanted to, they would, and they would get their messages across in like clever ways, things that are important and what people find important. So okay, now moving along to Antonio Caro right here. This is his work Colombia. So as you can see, it looks quite like just the Coca-Cola logo, but it is not. It says Colombia. I should mention that this was a print make. A little bit about Antonio Caro. He is also a conceptual artist from Colombia, and his work namely focused on cultural identity, colonialism, and corporate influence. So kind of Moving along backwards to the point where I made where Coca-Cola isn't just a drink, it is also a symbol in many aspects, but one of them is it being some sort of, it's a kind of globalization type of thing. And the reason why I say that is because everywhere you go, it's there. Coca-Cola is there. And that in a way is like spreading its brand and its culture. So this work specifically suggests that Colombia itself has been like branded in a way and turned into like a product for global like gain. And for Claro, this does kind of like mirror and mimic Colombia's history of cultural and economic colonization. This then raises the question of how much of a nation's identity is truly its own versus how much of it is impacted by like global influence and just influence from other places and countries. Now, this can now transition into me talking about Orientalism, my favorite thing on the entire planet. So, a little self-insert, I wrote about Orientalism last year and I was super enamored by it because like it was just like a feeling I've always had. I was like, how come the West always views namely the East, but literally any other place that isn't just predominantly white, why do we always view it a specific way, like it's backwards or something? Because of Orientalism. And I would recommend everyone read Edward Said and his book on Orientalism. It was written quite a while ago, but it is still incredibly relevant. And similarly, there was an essay written by Mariam Khalid, I think. And it was just lovely. It was very well written and it was very concise, very easy to follow. And I think everyone should read it if you haven't already. Anyways, quoting myself about Orientalism, it works towards depicting Eastern societies as inferior and of dying need of saving as a means to uplift the West. Typically they use like gender and gender binaries, or just binaries in general, and like white and mainstream feminism and the white savior complex. They use these as like tools to implement this agenda. It's very complex and intertwined. They're all very like woven together. These are the things that imperial powers tend to use in order to like even use as like a justification for invasion, in a similar way where they would use that in order to garner like resources from other countries. Yes. So, just something to think about. Anyways, now we move on to our last work right here. A little bit about the artist. He was also another conceptual artist. He was a part of the No Grupo collective, which basically kind of just like rejected traditional institutionalized art. His work often used humor in a way and ready-made objects. What does that remind you of, guys? None other than Fountain by Duchamp. That is why I put it here, just for our viewing pleasure, since we always talk about it. I think it was just also obviously very relevant because they are used in a similar way with a little bit of humor in it. In any case, his approach is still different with its subject matter. Mireles uses this symbolism to critique, or more so question, the whole thing of art itself, you know, just what is art type of thing. Should I move over? Nah. So essentially he's asking the question, what makes art art? What isn't art? What is just an object? In any case, anyways, the piece itself, it is just ready-made of a Coke bottle, and with it is like a little typed manuscript type of thing, which I will read to you. This Coca-Cola, recently discovered by pop art just 10 years ago, brand new. I rescued it from art to propose to integrate it into reality. Only there is a detail between keeping it or drinking it. Whether it is art or not, the decision is from you. Again, asking the same question. What is art? What dictates? What is art? What is just an object, a ready-made object? Or just an object, not even a ready-made object, because, you know, linguistics and all. So this work kind of calls into question this obsession that the art world seems to have in defining art, defining anything that they can as whether it is art or not. In a way, everything is art, that is my own opinion, but we'll get into my own opinion in a little bit. So if Warhol took art as a means to criticize consumer culture, or even just talk about consumer culture, he's taken it one step further by literally just saying that art is really up to perspective. And again, it is also just a question of if it's a Coke bottle, is it art? So, my own opinion. I would like to say, because this is my essay and I can say what I want, I believe, and I've talked about this in class as well, that when we were discussing this topic, very specifically this topic, I believe that two things can be true at once. I believe that I believe art is everywhere. I think it's quite hard to not think of it that way after being in an institution where you're seeing so many different types of art. It being like, because, you know, the very surface level understanding of art is that it is paintings and sculptures maybe, even if it's abstract, but it's something made with your hand from something that is like, just like a medium, I guess. It's an easier way to describe it. Then going into an institution, and especially at Emily Carr, it's very conceptual. Once you've been immersed in this type of world, I cannot possibly go about my life without thinking that everything is art. Inherently, everything is art. But then, at the same time, we can't just say, just because it is art, it's not an object. Like, it is. I think my own art are objects, if that makes sense. In a similar way, we were talking in class, I was saying that this one cup, like a coffee cup, has a design on it, logoing, you know? I'm saying this is a form of art, but again, no one's really thinking of it that way. We're thinking this is an object. But I'm also thinking of it as art. So inherently, I think it is both. It is both an object and art. And then back to this piece right here, I think it is art, and I think it's an object. I think his own personal touch is what made it into art for his own sake, like what he's striving for. But without this manuscript in it, I think that you can still think of it as art. There was thought put into it. There's thought put into everything, and in nature we see art and beauty all the time. I think we tend to maybe place value on things as art as long as it gives us some sort of emotion and some sort of feeling, because you can't just really look at something and then think, oh, that's what really makes it an object, I guess, when people look at something and just think, okay, like there's nothing really deep going on when we see something, and namely objects, you know, like, for example, cooking. Cooking is a form of art because of the feeling it gives you and the amount of hard work is put into it. This camera I am using and the mic and the stand and everything, it's a form of art to me because it's like craftsmanship has been put into it. There's craftsmanship in cooking. The similar way with these mechanics, in a similar way with the door hinges on this door, like someone had to create that. That's beautiful. Like, there's so much innovation that goes on, and I think all of it can be seen as art, but then we can still say those are objects. This camera is an object. It's beautiful and it's artwork to me, but it is still an object. Same way, my paintings, they are physical objects that belong on Earth. I think this is a little bit of a linguistics game. But then again, in the sake of having the conversation, which I think is like fun, I think, yes, something can be an object and art. And not just art in the traditional sense of, I made this painting, but art in any sort of craftsmanship or nature. That was a little tangent. I do apologize. I hope it'll look more concise post-editing, but anyways, we gotta go back to reality here with these artworks and making a conclusion. So my conclusion, all in all, I would just say that the way in which you conduct your art is very important, and it is not possible to be completely not political in your art. I think it's a little bit of a controversial take in, like, if the reason I say that is because I hear a lot that people don't think that their art is political at all. But I don't think that's possible. I think it is still saying something, even if you're not making your art political, that itself is saying something. Similar way, how a company may choose to conduct themselves in a way of, I want to be neutral, so I'm going to sue a workers' union. That sends a message. Yeah. Another reason why I kind of picked these artists specifically is because they are kind of like a 2-in-2 thing. There's printmaking here, over here, and then there's like ready-made objects here and here. Yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting and easier to compare them. However, the way they differ is that these were made in a way, it's a little bit convoluted to me. He's talking about consumer culture, but like, you know, anyone can get a Coke no matter who you are, and it'll taste the same. That's the beauty of it for him. That's what he's trying to talk about. However, over here, talking about the way people take resources from places and kind of brand the place itself from, and it like in a foreign influence, you know? It's a foreign influence, it's not by their like want. Yeah. And then again over here, these ones differ in how this one is basically just trying to spread political awareness. To me, it feels like a performance. It's, you know, taking these bottles, putting your own message, circulating them back. That feels like a lot of action being taken, and therefore feels quite performative for me. Performative in a good way, I guess, not performative in a fake-esque way, just no need to over-explain myself. Whereas over here, it is basically, it's a more simple subject matter. Well, simple in how you can ask it, but the question is quite large. Just what is art? What makes art art? Is it just a matter of perspective? Because I think that is what this artist is basically saying, that it is a matter of perspective. Yes. So that was my essay. I hope you guys liked it, especially my professor. I hope you liked it the best. And yeah, catch you later.